She was just walking home until a man in uniform crossed the line. What followed shook the entire nation. Watch till the end and let your voice be heard. Like, comment, and subscribe. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon in Wilmington, California. The air was still and golden, the sidewalks warm beneath the sun's touch. 9-year-old Norris walked alone, just 2 blocks from home, her sketchbook tucked carefully under one arm and a bright red apple in the other. Her feet moved at a light, steady pace. No running, no mischief, just a little girl making her way home after art class at the local community center. She wasn't humming or laughing. She wasn't drawing attention to herself. She was just being a child, doing what children should be able to do without fear. Then came the low hum of tires. A black and white police cruiser slowed as it rolled up beside her. The windows were tinted, the vehicle bulky and impersonal. It matched the stillness of the street like a stain on a painting. The passenger window buzzed down. Behind it sat a white police officer in mirrored sunglasses, the late sun glinting off the lenses. His voice was sharp, smooth, and cold. "You lost, sweetheart?" Aya stopped, startled, but answered with polite calmness. "No, sir, I live right there." She pointed down the block. The officer tilted his head and narrowed his eyes. "ID?" She blinked. "I'm 9, she said, confused. "I don't have ID." There was a pause. Then the door to the cruiser creaked open. His boots hit the pavement with force, loud in the silence. He was tall, heavy-set, with a trimmed mustache and hard features that never softened. "Where's your parent?" "At home," Aya said, starting to feel nervous. "I just left art class." "Don't get smart with me," he snapped, his voice dropping an octave. Before she could speak again, his hand reached out, fast and tight. He grabbed her by the wrist. "Hey," she yelped, recoiling. "I didn't do anything. Please let go." Her sketchbook slipped from her arm and thudded onto the sidewalk. The apple bounced into the gutter. Her voice trembled as she tried to pull away. "I'm going home. I didn't do anything." But the man was already twisting her arm behind her back. The pressure was instant and brutal. Aya screamed in agony, the high-pitched sound piercing the still air. And then came the sound. It was sharp and unmistakable, a bone snapping under force. Aya collapsed to the ground, sobbing, her small frame curling around the pain. Her right arm bent in a shape that arms weren't supposed to bend. She clutched her shoulder and cried out again, her face wrinkled in disbelief and agony. "That's what happens when you don't listen," the officer growled. He loomed over her, breathing hard. And then he reached for his cuffs as though she were a criminal. But Officer Ray Dunning, he didn't know everything. He didn't know that Aya had triggered an emergency shortcut on her phone the second he stepped out of the car, a press and hold function her father had drilled into her from the day she got her first phone, a direct call to her emergency contact. Her aunt, Lauren Norris, ex-military, former Army Ranger, regional boxing champion, and most importantly, the only person Chuck Norris trusted to protect his daughter when he wasn't there. The call had connected automatically. Lauren answered, and at first heard nothing but street noise, then the voice of a man, then Aya's, then the scream, then the snap. Lauren was already moving. She didn't speak. She didn't pause. She grabbed her keys, threw on her hoodie, and bolted out the door. "You picked the wrong little girl," she whispered to herself. At Wilmington General Hospital, the ER was always a blur of movement, but that day, time seemed to pause when EMTs burst through the doors with a little black girl in their arms, her face twisted in pain, her arm swollen and clearly broken. "What happened?" a nurse asked. "Dropped at the curb," one EMT said. "Police brought her. Didn't give a report, just left her." "What precinct?" "No idea." Didn't say. Staff swarmed. Pain meds, x-rays, IV lines, but Aya kept whispering through her tears. "I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything." A nurse noticed her clenched fist. Aya was gripping her phone with white knuckles. The screen glowed. "Call in progress, Lauren Norris 3214. 32 minutes. The line was still open. 20 miles away, Lauren Norris was behind the wheel of her black Dodge Challenger, weaving through traffic like a missile. Every word she'd heard on that call played on repeat in her head. The scream, the begging, the crack of bone. She hadn't heard Chuck's voice yet, but her phone lit up. "Dad, I'm on my way," she said, answering. "How bad?" came Chuck Norris's low, calm voice. Not emotional, not panicked, focused. "He broke her arm," Lauren said. There was a pause, no sound. Then Chuck spoke again, voice edged with steel. "Where is he?" Gone, dropped her and ran. Find him, hold him, I'll come through the wall if I have to. I've got her, Lauren said. Aisha hung up without another word. When Lauren arrived at the hospital, she didn't stop at the front desk. I'm her emergency contact, she said. Norris, 9 years old, broken arm. A nurse blinked, hesitated, then pointed. Room 6. Lauren pushed through the door and stopped cold. Aya lay trembling on the bed. Her arm was in a temporary brace. Tear streaks marked her cheeks. The little girl looked up, and when their eyes met, the tears came faster. Lauren dropped to her knees beside the bed. I'm here, baby girl, she whispered, gently wrapping her arms around Aya. I got you. Aya clung to her. He just grabbed me, she sobbed. I told him my name. I told him who my dad was. Lauren's breath hitched. You told him? I told him I was Chuck Norris's daughter, Aya whimpered. He laughed. Lauren went still, her eyes hardened. This hadn't been a misunderstanding, it hadn't been confusion. It was deliberate. It was targeted. Lauren rose to her feet. She pulled out her phone, tapped the recording saved from the emergency call, and played it aloud. The room filled with the terrified voice of a child, the harsh words of a man, the sound of a bone breaking. But the nurses froze. Oh my God, one whispered. Another looked away, visibly shaken. You know who the officer was? Someone asked. I'm about to, Lauren said. And with that, she walked out, her jaw tight, her fists clenched, and her mission clear. Ray Dunning had no idea what was coming, but he was about to find out. Lauren Norris was no stranger to chaos. She'd walked through smoke in Afghanistan, treated wounds with one hand while aiming with the other. She'd won regional boxing titles in 2 weight classes. But none of that prepared her for the sound she'd heard coming from that emergency call. Her niece's voice, trembling, pleading, followed by the unmistakable snap of breaking bone. That sound haunted her thoughts as she stood in the hospital hallway, fists clenched at her sides. Inside room 6, Aya had finally dozed off, exhausted by trauma and painkillers. Her tiny fingers were still curled around Lauren's sleeve, even in sleep. Lauren had pried herself away only minutes earlier to begin what she knew was coming, a fight for truth and for justice. She pulled out her phone and tapped into her encrypted contact list. Her fingers hovered only a second before she pressed on the name, Sergeant Maria Sato, Internal Affairs, L.A. Lauren? Came the voice on the other end. I need a favor, Lauren said bluntly. Wilmington Division, an officer broke my niece's arm and dumped her at the ER like garbage. No name, no report, no badge, but I have a dispatch record and a timestamp. Send me everything you've got, Maria said, voice tightening. I want his name, badge, patrol unit, complaints, if there are any. You'll have it in 10. Lauren hung up and turned her focus to the hospital's intake desk. The woman behind the counter started to protest when Lauren approached, but her tone made it clear she wasn't accepting no. I'm looking for the EMT intake records for a girl dropped off around 2:15 p.m. black and white cruiser, no handoff. You have security footage. Pull it. The nurse hesitated. I'm not asking, Lauren said, lowering her voice. I'm informing. If I have to bring the media into this hospital tomorrow morning, it won't be because of a broken arm. It'll be because someone here thought hiding information was more important than protecting a child. Within minutes, she had a copy of the log. The officer's name wasn't listed, but there was a code. Patrol Unit 73D. That was all she needed. Exactly 9 minutes later, her phone buzzed. Maria had delivered. For Raymond Dunning, badge 5372, Wilmington Division. All right, complaints. 3. All dismissed. Current duty status. Off duty, but he had taken the car without authorization. Lauren stared at the photo Maria had sent. Mid-40s, cold eyes. A man who thought the badge was his shield, not a responsibility. Lauren's mouth flattened. She opened her camera and took a photo of Aya's arm in the cast. The swelling, the bruising, the angle. Her finger hovered briefly over the send button. Then she whispered to herself, this man's about to learn why no one touches a Norris girl. Lauren's black Challenger growled as it came to a halt across from Benny's Grill, a dusty roadside diner near the edge of town. The kind of place with old vinyl booths and waitresses who didn't ask too many questions. According to Maria, Ray Dunning ate there every Sunday. Same booth, same time, like clockwork. Lauren sat motionless in the driver's seat, engine off, phone in hand. From her angle, she had a perfect line of sight through the diner's wide front windows. And there he was, Booth near the window, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, barking at the waitress, grinning like nothing in the world had happened hours earlier. Lauren's jaw flexed. She waited 15 minutes. Then she opened a door, stepped out, and walked across the street. Calm, composed, purposeful. When she entered the diner, a bell jingled overhead. A few heads turned. The air inside was thick with the smell of burnt bacon and cheap coffee. Dunning glanced up, but didn't recognize her. Not yet. She walked straight to his table. "Can I help you?" he said, his voice tired and annoyed, not even looking at her fully. Lauren didn't answer. She took out her phone, tapped play, and placed it gently on the table in front of him. The diner went quiet. "Please stop, that hurts. I didn't do anything," Ya's voice echoed from the speaker. Then, crack. The entire place froze. Dunning's smirk vanished. He looked up, jaw slightly slack. "Where did you get that?" Lauren leaned in slightly. "You know who that girl is?" she asked, voice like ice. "Doesn't matter," he said, stiffening. Lauren held up a photo. Aya in the hospital bed, face tear-streaked, arm in a temporary cast. "That's Aya Norris," she said, "and I'm Lauren Norris." His eyes widened. "The daughter of..." "That's right," she lowered her voice further. "Chuck Norris's daughter. And my niece." Dunning tried to recover, puffed out his chest, but his hands shook. "You threatening me?" "If I were threatening you," Lauren said calmly, "you'd be face down already." She slid a napkin toward him, written in thick black ink. "Room 6, Wilmington General, 9 years old, broken arm, audio witnesses, internal affairs." She stared at him. "By the time my brother lands, you'll be lucky to keep your badge. You people think you can..." Lauren slammed both palms on the table. The whole diner jumped. "What you did wasn't protocol, it wasn't a mistake, it was cowardice," she said through gritted teeth. "You broke the wrong little girl, and now I'm gonna break your career." He turned and walked out. Minute later, her phone buzzed. "Maria Sadto. Waitress just called in. I said you confronted him and played the recording." Lauren smiled. "Let's just say I dropped something on his table." "Bro baseball, you're not done, are you?" Lauren looked toward the horizon. The sun was setting behind the palm trees, casting long shadows across the asphalt. "I haven't even started." The city of Wilmington slept uneasily that night. While headlines were still catching up and whispers spread across social media, Lauren Norris wasn't resting. She sat beside Aya's hospital bed watching the rhythmic rise and fall of her niece's chest. The girl had finally stopped crying, but even in sleep, her body trembled faintly, an echo of trauma still rattling through her small frame. Lauren had barely spoken since returning from the diner. She hadn't needed to. The wheels were already in motion. As she stood silently, stepped out of the room and made a call. He answered on the first ring. "Where is he?" Chuck Norris's voice was like steel dragged across stone. "Still in town, eats at Benny's Grill every Sunday. I gave him the facts." He tried to brush it off until I told him whose daughter she is. Silence. "I'm landing in 6 hours," Chuck said. "Don't let him vanish." Lauren didn't respond. She didn't need to. She already had a plan. The morning sun broke over Wilmington, but the calm didn't last. In less than 12 hours, a video had gone viral. A rough, shaky clip from inside Benny's Grill. Someone had recorded the moment Lauren confronted Officer Ray Dunning. The audio wasn't crystal clear, but the voices were unmistakable. A child begging, a crack, silence, and then Lauren's words. "You broke the wrong little girl." By 8:20 IMM, the clip had over 300,000 shares. By 9:15, it was on national morning shows. By 10 o'clock, it reached Chuck Norris's official website where it was pinned with a single caption. "You hurt my daughter, now the world is watching." Social media exploded. "Justice for Aya." "You broke the wrong girl." "Norris justice." And somewhere in a quiet neighborhood on the west edge of Wilmington, Ray Dunning was packing a bag. Lauren watched from the front seat of her black Challenger, parked discreetly down the street from Dunning's house. The windows were tinted, her phone on silent. Aya was stable in the hospital, protected by armed security hired the moment the video began gaining traction. Every detail was accounted for, except one. What Dunning would do next. At 6:43 a.m., her earpiece crackled with a voice from a local informant. "Garage door just opened." Lauren's eyes sharpened. A figure stepped out, head low, duffel bag slung over one shoulder. Ray Dunning. Dressed in jeans and a hoodie, he looked like any ordinary man leaving for a trip, if not for the visible badge still clipped arrogantly to his waistband. Across the street, a black Dodge Charger idled, engine running. "He's skipping town," Lauren muttered. The door to the passenger seat of her own car opened. Chuck Norris slid in beside her wearing a black jacket, jeans, and boots. No words, just a nod. Lauren pointed. "He's right there." Chuck watched silently as Dunning moved toward the Charger. The former officer's head turned. He scanned the street out of habit, but his eyes missed the Challenger. And then he shut the trunk. When he turned back toward the driver's side, Lauren was already standing 10 feet away. He froze. Her stance was calm, balanced, controlled, but there was something unmovable about her, like a wall built to stop the tide. "Wouldn't leave just yet," she said. Dunning's hand twitched toward his waist. "Go ahead," Lauren said. "Touch that badge. That'll be the last move you ever make." He paused, eyes darting, sweat forming along his hairline. "What do you want from me?" he spat. "I want you to feel something close to what she felt," Lauren said, stepping forward. He opened his mouth to argue, but didn't get the chance. Her fist landed square on his jaw. Not wild, not angry, precise. Dunning stumbled back against his car, stunned. Before he could recover, Lauren advanced, grabbed him by the collar, and slammed him into the side of the vehicle. "You grabbed the little girl," slam. "You broke her arm," slam. "You left her like trash," slam. He tried to fight back, but Lauren twisted his arm behind his back with flawless precision. He cried out. "Hurts, doesn't it?" she said. "You ever think about how scared she was?" She made it up. A sharp knee to his gut silenced him. He dropped to the ground, gasping. Lauren crouched beside him and pulled an envelope from her jacket. Inside, a civil lawsuit for assault on a minor, a subpoena for his court appearance, a restraining order signed by Chuck Norris himself, and a formal internal affairs report. She dropped the envelope on his chest. "You're done, Ray." Sirens pierced the air behind them. 2 squad cars rounded the corner. Dunning moaned on the ground, unable to get up. Lauren rose. "Get up." He groaned, coughing. "I said get up." The arriving officers jumped from their cruisers and moved toward the scene. They recognized her instantly. One of them raised a brow. "You Lauren Norris?" She nodded once. "My daughter's in art class with Aya," he said quietly. "She still talks about that sketchbook." Lauren looked him in the eye. She'd not done drawing. Dunning was cuffed and shoved face first onto the hood of his own car. Phones appeared in every window. No one looked surprised. No one defended him. The truth was out. The footage spread like wildfire. The ex-officer arrested on his own driveway, the bruises on his face, the black Challenger in the background, and Lauren Norris standing tall, expression calm, with the sealed envelope visible in the final frame. It was silent. No narration. What it didn't need one. The image told the story. Inside the Wilmington Police Department, tension rippled. Officers exchanged glances, some made calls, others disappeared into offices, shutting their doors. No one stood up for Dunning. Not this time. Lauren's phone buzzed again. Maria Sado. "His badge has been flagged, his page frozen, he's under full review for excessive force." "Not enough," Lauren said. Maria paused. "What are you going to do?" Lauren looked out the window at the growing crowd outside the hospital. "I'm going to do what they won't." By the time dawn broke on Tuesday morning, the city of Wilmington was no longer just a town near the coast. It had become a symbol, a battleground, a line in the sand. The story of Aya Norris, the 9-year-old girl whose arm had been snapped by a police officer, wasn't just a local outrage. It had grown into a national reckoning. But with visibility came consequences. And now, the Norris family would learn how deep the system's silence truly ran. Lauren was halfway through her morning run when it happened. The street was quiet, the sky just beginning to lighten into soft pinks and grays. She was dressed in a simple hoodie and track pants, earbuds in, pace steady, a moment of calm before the next firestorm. In a gray sedan, screeched to a halt in front of her. 3 men jumped out, plainclothes, hard eyes. One of them flashed a badge. "Lauren Norris, you're under temporary detainment for obstruction and aggravated assault on a peace officer." She didn't get to speak, didn't even get to ask why. Rough hands grabbed her arms, cold cuffs snapped onto her wrists. No Miranda rights, no explanation, just silence. She was shoved into the back seat as neighbors peeked from windows, phones recording. By the time the sedan pulled away, the footage had already hit Twitter. "The arrested Lauren. Norris v. the system." This is retaliation. 6:44 a.m., Chuck Norris was on the phone with Sergeant Maria Sato. "You didn't warn her," he said, voice tight, barely controlled. "I didn't know," Sato answered. "They bypassed internal channels. It's retaliation." "I want names," Chuck growled. "Every name, every signature, every address." "I'm working on it," she promised, "but they're trying to bury her fast." Lauren sat in a holding cell. No paperwork, no lawyer, no charge sheet. Just a clipboard with a single document, a gag order demanding she cease all public commentary and involvement in police misconduct cases. She stared at it once, then tore it cleanly in half. "You think I'm scared of paper?" she muttered. From behind the glass, one of the men sneered. "You're making noise the department doesn't want." "I'm not walking away," she replied. "Not now, not ever." At 8:02 a.m., the door to the holding area opened. 3 people stepped inside: Chuck Norris, 2 federal lawyers, and a civil rights investigator from the U.S. Department of Justice. Chuck didn't say a word. He simply handed over a flash drive. Inside, footage from the squad car that arrested Lauren showing the lack of any formal procedure, body cam footage, proof of her medical and emergency response certifications, legal documentation of her right to confront her niece's attacker under California civilian authority laws. The federal agent nodded once. "She's leaving with us." Lauren rose slowly. Her wrists were still red, her posture unbroken. Outside, the press waited, protesters gathered, a representative from the mayor's office stood nervously off to the side. Shep stepped forward. "The city of Wilmington tried to silence the woman who protected my daughter," he said. "They tried to call justice a threat. Now they'll see what happens when you come after a Norris twice." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. By that evening, Lauren and Chuck held an emergency town hall meeting in the gymnasium of a local high school. Over 600 people showed up: teachers, parents, former officers, and most importantly, victims. A mother stepped forward. "My son was slammed against a wall for loitering outside his own apartment." A teenager held up a phone. "This is what my brother's face looked like after a routine check." A retired officer took the mic. "I tried to report my partner. I was demoted, then forced out." Each voice was like a strike on the wall of silence that had protected people like Ray Dunning for years. And Lauren stood in the center of it, taking it all in. "We're building a case," she said. "Every story, every badge number, every report they've buried, it's all coming out." That night, their new website launched: www.norrisjustice.org. By morning, it had over 18,000 verified submissions. At 11:32 a.m., the chief of Wilmington Police Department resigned. 3 more officers were placed on administrative leave. The district attorney reopened 10 previously closed cases involving excessive force. The system was cracking. And upstairs in a quiet hospital room, Aya smiled for the first time in days. Her cast had been replaced with a removable brace. The pain was easing, and on her tablet she scrolled through headlines she barely understood, but the feeling in her chest was clear. People were listening. Lauren knelt beside her. "Do you think other kids will be okay now?" Aya asked softly. Lauren brushed a curl behind her ear. "They will," she said, "because you were brave enough to speak, and now the world is speaking with you." The courtroom was full. Los Angeles County Superior Court had seen celebrity trials before, but never one with this much weight. This wasn't about a scandal. This was about a system. At the front sat Lauren, calm, focused, a notebook in her lap. Beside her, Chuck Norris, still like a mountain, no anger on his face, just fire in his eyes. And between them, Aya, wearing a pale blue dress, her healing arm gently supported by a brace, her eyes clear. Across the aisle sat Ray Dunning, pale, smaller than he had ever looked before, surrounded by lawyers, but alone. The judge entered. The jury was seated. "The state of California v. Officer Raymond Dunning," the prosecutor began. "We intend to prove that the defendant violently assaulted a minor, attempted to flee prosecution, and conspired to suppress the truth." But the gallery was still. The first piece of evidence, the emergency call recording. Aya's voice echoed through the courtroom. "Please, I didn't do anything. Please stop. That hurts." Then the crack. Even the judge flinched. One juror covered her mouth. Then came the x-rays, the photos, the timeline. The prosecutor built the case with quiet intensity. Lauren took the stand next. I didn't punch him because I lost control, she said. I punched him because he believed no one would ever hold him accountable. Then came Aya. The courtroom held its breath as the child stepped up to the microphone. He asked me for ID, she said. I told him I was 9. I told him my name. I told him who my dad was. He laughed. Then he grabbed my arm. Yeah, she paused. I heard it break. Aya then held up a crayon drawing. A little girl in a brace, standing on a podium holding a megaphone. Beneath it, in bold, childlike letters, I'm stronger now. The gallery rose. Quiet, powerful, unified. Ray Dunning never looked up. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. At 4:11 p.m., they returned. Guilty, on all accounts. As Dunning was led away in cuffs, the crowd outside the courthouse erupted in cheers. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, but the Norris family didn't stop to speak. They just walked. Together, flanked by lawyers, supporters, and survivors. At the bottom of the steps, a voice called out, "What happens now?" Chuck turned slightly. Now, he said, we built something that doesn't need a Norris to be heard. 3 weeks had passed since Ray Dunning's conviction. His face had disappeared from the news, but his name still echoed through every precinct, courtroom, and kitchen table where people were finally daring to speak. His guilt hadn't just ended a career, it had started a movement. But for the Norris family, justice wasn't a finish line. It was the beginning of the war. Chuck and Lauren hadn't rested. Together, they had transformed norrisjustice.org from a website into a full-blown operational hub. They called it FIS, Fighters for Institutional Safety and Truth, a network of retired detectives, civil rights lawyers, digital forensics experts, and trauma counselors, all united under one mission: to break the cycle of silence and shine a light on every hidden abuse. By the end of the month, FIST had opened offices in 20 states, received over 31,000 verified reports, and launched 3 independent investigations into police departments across the country. But the system wasn't finished. It never went quietly. One morning, Lauren received an encrypted email. No sender, just a subject line. Incoming retaliation, eyes on you. Inside, a list of 5 cities where FIS operations had been flagged for investigation. 2 others had filed cease and desist orders. One department had launched a preemptive lawsuit accusing the initiative of unlawful data collection. Chuck read the message in silence, then said only one thing. They're scared. Lauren's answer came just as quick. Good, they should be. But the next attack didn't come through law offices or government channels. It came from the shadows. Norris Justice Organ was hit with a major cyber attack. Thousands of testimonies were scrambled. Some were wiped. Others were leaked. Whistleblowers' names appeared on anonymous forums. Harassment followed. Lauren's personal phone was cloned. Fake messages surfaced online, portraying her as unstable, paranoid, even violent. One headline screamed, "Chuck Norris's niece leads dangerous vigilante group." They were trying to flip the story. They wanted fear. They got fire instead. Lauren held a press conference the next morning, standing in front of the FISD banner with Aya by her side. They can crash our servers, they can smear my name, but they will never silence what they fear most: a 9-year-old girl who refused to stay quiet. Then Chuck stepped forward. "You want to scare us?" he said, his voice calm and low. "I've seen fear. I've been fear. And nothing I've faced in combat, on film, or in real life is uglier than what you're hiding behind those shields. You came for my daughter once. You won't get a second shot." That night, 2 FIS offices received suspicious packages. One was a bomb threat, the other contained spyware hidden in a USB device disguised as a donation form. Federal agents were called, news outlets swarmed, but the Norris family remained unshaken until the video arrived. It was sent from an untraceable account. 10 seconds of drone footage, no sound, a schoolyard, children laughing, and a man standing at the edge of the fence, face blurred, hands in pockets, watching Aya. The clip ended without warning. Lauren's phone slipped from her hand. She called Chuck immediately. "They're not coming after us anymore," she said. "They're coming after her." Within 48 hours, Aya was relocated. A secure property outside Los Angeles with surveillance, facial recognition entry, and a rotating team of former Navy SEALs protecting the perimeter. Chuck became something more than a father. He became a fortress. He sat by her side at night, reading from her favorite comic books, voice soft and steady. No matter how calm he looked, his eyes were always scanning the shadows. But Lauren, she planned the next strike. It had to be louder, bigger, stronger. They needed to rip the mask off the system once and for all. The plan was simple. The target, undeniable. The next morning, on the steps of the federal courthouse in downtown LA, Chuck and Lauren stood before a massive crowd. Helicopters circled above, media vans lined the streets. Thousands of protesters held signs and phones. Aya stood between them, clutching her sketchbook to her chest. Chuck took the mic. "They told us to stop," he said. "They threatened us, they came after our daughter, so now we're pulling back the curtain." Lauren stepped forward holding up a small flash drive. On here are 49 internal memos, 12 sealed personnel files, and over 31,000 verified testimonies, all buried, all protected until now. Gasps echoed through the crowd, phones lit up. Behind them, a massive screen flickered on. The drone footage played, then froze. Zoomed in, AI enhanced. The man at the fence became clear, a retired high-ranking sergeant, relocated after a string of misconduct complaints. The crowd erupted. At that moment, the U.S. Department of Justice announced a full federal investigation into coordinated suppression efforts across 3 states. But the moment belonged to Aya. She stepped to the mic, her voice small but unwavering. "My name is Aya Norris. I'm 10 years old. A man broke my arm and tried to make me feel like I didn't matter." She held up a drawing, a girl holding a megaphone in one hand and a bandaged arm in the other. Beneath it, her voice matters. The crowd stood, thousands, silent in awe. And in that moment, they didn't see a child. They saw a movement. They saw the beginning of something no badge, no lie, no silence could ever erase. That night, Chuck and Lauren sat together in the safe house. The walls hummed with quiet security systems. Outside, the guards rotated shifts. Inside, Aya slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. Lauren leaned back in her chair. "This isn't over," she said. "No," Chuck replied, "but now they know." He looked out the window, his voice almost a whisper. "You don't touch a Norris." He paused. "And you never, ever touch his daughter." One girl's voice sparked a movement, and it's only the beginning. Stand with truth. Share this story. Like, comment, and subscribe for more